Okay, so happy 10th anniversary and hello from the Denver airport. My name is Julie Yack and I'm here to celebrate our 10-year anniversary of the user group.
Woo!
Who bought the cake? Someone have cake? It's cake,
There's
right?
there's cupcakes in a minute. They're coming.
Okay. All right.
So you all saw that we are recording, so if you don't wish to be recorded for your participation, exit now and review it later. Always looking for speakers. Right now, the calendar is clear. We have a few that we're in the process of planning, but if there's something you want to see, something you want to present, let me know. And look, there's the cake. So I told you it was going to be here. So thanks for everyone, for my fellow MVPs and meeting coordinators. Thanks for Shan for kicking me in the pants 10 years ago saying we should do this thing. And it's been going well, so I really appreciate the community involvement and everyone here that helped us out. So thank you all so much. And with that, we don't want to hear announcements. We want to hear the good stuff. Does anyone have a question they want to start with, or should I start with one? So I'll start.
I'll start with one, I guess. So
Okay.
Who was the very first... Who was the very first speaker?
Shan.
Do we know?
It was Shan.
It must have been David, I would have thought.
Probably me and Julie.
Yeah.
Because we would have kicked it off together.
Yes.
And you remembering what it was on?
Not a clue.
No, I don't. Probably ALM. Maybe ALM. I have to go back in the Wayback Machine to find that.
Maybe it was Portals.
Or it might have just been just a general we sort of kicked it off for the purpose of building apps, so.
So if you would like to ask a question, take yourself off mute and just ask your question.
Hello, good afternoon. I'd like to ask about how you guys are, what are you guys using for like ALM and DevOps? I've been doing a little bit of reading and just there's a few things out there, a few tools. So I just want to see what the people are using.
Can I take that one? So,
nominate anyway.
So I would highly recommend that today. There's an MVP Whale. He has some DevOps tooling for CDS or for CRM as you use. So use Azure DevOps for your pipelines and your build process, and use his toolkit with really PowerShell wrappers around our PowerShell scripts. So it's a fairly I highly recommend that you watch some of the videos from Mark Schweigert. I'll post some videos in the chat window here for deeper links into those. To more of the loop of the developers. I think Mark's a heavy advocate of Daryl's term tool. I don't know not much on that. So, but the video.
Sparkle is not mine. Sparkle is Scott's.
Oh, Scott, sorry. Yeah, see, I don't even use it, so. Sorry about the misinformation there, but yeah, basically Sparkle is one of them as well. But definitely start off with that. We are looking at changing the investment here for us to come up with a better ALM toolkit and a whole end-to-end ALM story for you. So stay tuned for future announcements.
And when we're talking about Mark Schweigert's videos,
they have this tool called DAX-If. Yeah.
So we had the kickoff call this morning for more videos from Mark Schweigert.
Yeah, so I would.
Oh, okay. He does some really good videos.
Go ahead. If you want to go ahead, Fernando, and ask the next question.
Asking let's just add if to working, but now I've been trying to decide whether to use the Sparkle or the DAX F. I mean, there's some things I like better about the DAX F, but I'm not sure how those if the FSX work well with the Azure pipelines or not. What the DAX F does is that it has a bunch of F# scripts, and from what I gather, you're able to run those on Azure pipeline. So I'm just wondering if anybody used that. And also the Delegate AS, also he has a bunch of the XRM mockup, and it seems that he's got a bunch of good tools. I know I use the XRM definitely typed, and that's really helped me out a lot on my JavaScript coding.
Just one note of caution that I've seen some people make mistake with some of these third-party tools is when they move the configuration into XRM to attributes within the source code and then regenerate their plugin assemblies and registrations. Sometimes those registrations get generated with different IDs, so that surfaces as upgrade issues later with customers. So in addition that, it still doesn't, there are certain restrictions within the platform as when you're changing your plugin type and stuff like that in the contract, that you have to change the versions and stuff like that. So be cautious that the tooling, the methodologies you're using and the types of changes you're doing are actually ordered on the platform and don't break your pipelines.
Yeah, and again, using attribution-based functions as far as, register this for retrieve multiple on this entity type. It's actually been a really hotly debated subject inside. We've been arguing with each other about that for probably a couple of years. And that sort of put it to bed in 8 and 9, that sort of attribution just would not have survived it. And then carrying forward kind of where we're going with the plugin system in the future, it wouldn't survive it well. That doesn't mean you won't see it resurface or come up a different way, but the standard mechanic of the way you think about using attributes on methods or functions, it doesn't really survive well going forward.
So what Matt's saying is the one camp is saying, oh, it's better to put what you want to register right in your code. So whereas people are back in infra and start to move that, the actual evidence and how we hook it up in the back end has to be set up to the proper registration steps that are in the platform today. So be cautious of, and I know there will be lots of third-party tools that will say, oh, let's take the first approach here. Be very cautious in taking hard dependencies on those because they may cause you some grief later on.
For everybody listening in, it's such interesting. You have Shan MacArthur and Matthew on the same team, because I used to remember these calls where it was a really different approach, and then I'll never forget.
Actually, the statement was, well, if he's got such an opinion, we'll hire him.
Right. I thought it was more around working with polymorphism, so we'll just hire him to keep him quiet.
That
you have an opinion on that statement?
Polymorphism.
I still want polymorphic relationships. I'm still an advocate.
So I think one of the best things about this combo is that we're getting straight answers, even if the answer is we're not sure yet. And as things change, watch out. Then somebody brings us the core answer that we used to get before. So I think that's where
it's real for sure. And you guys really are an unbelievable asset to both of us, to all of us. So thank you guys.
So one question that Julie's just forwarded me because she's having a little trouble at the airport with the internet was, what do you guys all feel was the best feature function from the past 10 years? And then maybe what will be the next great function or feature in the 10 years forward?
My opinion is Microsoft Flow.
For the next 10 years?
Well, it'll be parity in 10 years, so I'm looking forward to it.
I can't believe that this XRM virtual user group hasn't called out actually shipping CDS as a platform as the feature for the group, because this is really why the group was originated, is to build applications on a naked platform, regardless if there was CRM on it or not. And so now with CDS being your default schema, we now actually have that platform built in.
Yeah,
and I agree. I'd say in terms of that, because that's all I've very rarely done as sales or service. I've been doing XRM since it's before there was them, and I like to think that the power everything we've proven to the software are.
It is the next big. Actually, I don't even want to use the term next. It is the current direction of corporate level work. As across my when I'm not that term from okay, this is the thing we're doing for CDS Dynamics / the Power Platform. It is essentially that most of the corporate app teams are taking a bet on. So you can think of it, and I know that I'm going to get a visit from Stephen later today for probably using this term, but you can think of it as the evolution of .NET workflow. So a couple of years back, 10 years back, we had 10 workflow engines, and Bill came around and said, this is kind of crazy, pick one. And we ended up developing Windows Workflow Foundation. We reset it, built it again in 5.2. 4.5 was we learned a whole lot from the Windows Workflow runtime, and we learned what worked and what didn't work. And spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out how to do designers for the Windows Workflow engine. I imagine that lots of you had questions. It didn't matter where it was just not a really good experience. And that was one of the big learnings that came out of it. The other big learning was, making you guys write and deal with how data gets in and gets out of it was, pretty much a really loud explanation that came back. And Flow was really built to deal with that problem, built on the connector architecture, built on the idea of taking the underlying logic app runtime and essentially making it the replacement for Windows Workflow across all of Microsoft. And that's happening. I mean, it's not just that they're part of us. They're part of the Power Platform. They're core central to our strategy, but they're also central to Office's strategy. Okay. You're seeing it pop up across the board throughout all the Microsoft offerings. So look for a lot more interesting and cool things going forward. And insofar as Phil's statement about, it should be, it should essentially be the peer to what the existing workflow engine is inside CDS. It will be. It will fully replace the async side of that workflow engine in the midterm. Longer term, we're trying to sort out how we want to deal with the sync side of it. Whether or not we want to do what we did to Windows Workflow or we want to do something different. So we'll see.
Matt, I was hoping you would say in fullness of time, but
I'm holding that one for later.
Okay.
Because I think Mr. Cunningham is on the call, and I borrowed that term from him at one point.
He pays me royalties every time he uses it, so
that's right.
He tries to limit use.
I'm short right now. I don't have any cash today.
We're moving to a consumption model for that. So, yeah.
I have another
Go ahead.
I have another question. What do you guys know what's gonna happen, or what's the plan for the on-premises version? Because I listen to all this, like the CDS and the Flow, and I mean, it's just not something that people that are on the on-premise can access, right? Because I mean, it doesn't connect to it as readily as it connects it to the online version. So you guys know if the on-premise will get any of this, or if they're gonna keep it, or what's the plan for it?
So on-prem is being targeted primarily at the CE workloads, so customer engagement workloads at this point. It does not have, in the 9X version that we shipped on-prem, it does not have the core CDS capabilities. It of course does not have Flow. It doesn't have the new designers, those things. As far as bringing that to on-prem, some aspects of that will come through on-prem as just kind of a byproduct of the way the product is built. But it is not our current intention to bring any of that as a standalone thing to on-prem. Okay. The on-prem product is continuing to be focused at primarily the customer engagement workloads.
And into sort of hybrid scenarios where you're mixing and matching some stuff from the cloud service like about your CDS or CRM on-prem.
Yeah, there's some interesting discussions going on around that. As far as, should we stand up the ability to use something like the CDS connector to talk to on-prem? Folks are doing it today using the data gateways, the gateway componentry. It isn't a officialized implementation with a pattern, but it is something that folks are doing. And I guess, honestly, I'm kind of in a wait and see mode. We have been slowly defocusing on-prem. Okay, i.e. in the last 9.0 release, we didn't ship 9.0 until we were done with the 9.0 cycle, and we moved to 9.1. There were a number of reasons we did that, but fundamentally, we wanted to ship what was, for the most part, a completed product to on-prem without having to deal with servicing. It was an inversion of the way we'd done it in the past. And that's the pattern that I would expect you'll see us continue for, right now, the foreseeable future.
I don't know, Matt. I think this internet thing is kind of a fad.
Yeah, might be a fad.
I recognize all the voices. Can we take a quick minute and introduce our Microsoft friends? So, Shan, most of us know you because you helped found the group and you're an MVP alum, but what's your role at Microsoft these days?
I'm on the CDS platform team as a program manager.
Okay, and Ryan?
I am the program manager lead for the Power Apps team.
Mr. Barbour?
I'm principal architect for I guess now it's labeled the Power Apps platform. I cover CDS and all the other pieces.
Karsten, you've been quiet. Are you able to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. So my name is Carsten Groth. I'm former or previous MVP and now working as a global black belt in an EMEA team specialized on Power Platform.
And you are the designer of our user group logo.
I am.
Yes. So.
Wow, some more trivia there.
Okay, so back to the questions. We've got one here. Should I be able to trigger flows that are included in solutions? Phil, do you want to come off mute and talk about that question a little bit?
Hi, yes. So I've been able to create flows, use the CDS connector in Flow when record selected, and I get that flow to be triggered and show up within the user interface inside a model-driven app, unified interface model-driven app, and it will show up, but it will only show up if I create that flow via the business logic flows method. If I try and add that flow to a solution, it doesn't seem to show up.
Yep. So the answer on that is it is actually supported. You can create a flow within a solution. The visual mechanic that we use to get there is a little clunky right now. And we've been collecting that feedback. One of the beauties of the design surfaces in the platform that we're in right now is that we do have the ability to adapt to that kind of feedback very quickly. But to answer your immediate question about, well, how do I get to that thing? The way in which you would do it is from the design surface, you'd go to the solutions, choose your solution. Be in your solution, and at the top, there's an add item. Choose add item and choose flow.
Yep, and that's what I do. And I create the flow, and it still doesn't appear.
It should be in, no, it doesn't show up under processes. It shows up under flows.
Hmm.
So are you using the legacy Solution Explorer or the modern one?
In web.powerapps.com, create the flow. I go into solutions, go to add flow, add the CDS connector, and make the, add an action. And then I expect that flow to appear on the entity in the model-driven app in the flows drop-down. And it doesn't appear for me. It only appears if I create it via the other way.
I was just going to jump in. I think David is right here in the comments that this sounds like a bug, and I believe we're tracking it already.
Interesting. Okay. I just actually did it this morning. I was doing something else and did it this morning, and it showed up for me. And I'm in North America.
Yeah, but you're Matt Barbour.
You're on this VIP platform.
I'm in North America, so let me ask you where you're doing it at.
I was doing it in Serum 11, UK.
UK. Okay. Yep. That might explain it then. So.
Okay.
I got another question, Matt. When will we see Flow take into account dynamics duplicate detection?
That is a really interesting question and something that I actually need to chat with Brandon about. The focus of that connector right now, and it's not really a flow question.
Right.
It's a, how does the native interface to CDS deal with that? And that is actually something I want to highlight for you guys, that historically, both the Canvas app system, and let me actually pause, some kind of an overall change that's occurred. Ryan Cunningham identified himself as the Power Apps lead. So when you guys have historically thought about Power Apps, you're using mentally the term that is the Canvas app system. That no longer really applies. When we talk about Power Apps, we're talking about the whole UX layer. So UCI, all the presentation tiers, Ryan owns all of that under one leadership, under one dev team. That's all coming together. Okay. Now yeah. Now historically, the Canvas app system and the Flow system and the other systems out there have talked to us through a connector, and that connector is being phased out. It'll still look like a connector, at least in the short term, but it's functionally being phased out and going pure native. So it's talking to us, talking to the CDS core as though it were part of the platform. Okay, there's no intermediary step. Now that opens up a whole bunch of interesting possibilities and abilities to deal with things like duplicate detection, which the CDS system has built into it. Unfortunately, we haven't got there yet. We've got to get that native interface fully working and fully shipped, and then we'll start adding the bells and whistles to it and bringing the rest of that out. Make sense?
It does, Matt. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when we went to unified interface, that basically became a model app. And
yes,
that's how I'm actually writing a blog article about it now, because I think people just don't understand of how we've migrated and moved from the one platform to the other. Of course, they haven't been in the conversations that we have, but when you start to realize that and put all those things together, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I, just to double click on that, like, we obviously brought two pieces of technology together, right? We started this project we now refer to as Canvas Apps, which, to Matt's point, is sort of what most people have in their mind when they hear Power Apps a couple of years ago, and it has some advantages and some disadvantages. It is an inherently blank canvas, which is great in that it's not inherently bound to any data source. I can connect a bunch of stuff to it. I can do really custom UX crafting, to pixel perfect level without writing a lot of code. It has a lot of downsides too, though, right? It doesn't have today a native understanding richly of a sophisticated relational data source like CDS. We've had to do a lot of work to catch it up to what a more sophisticated declarative client can understand over a data source like that. And classically, reusing the stuff I build there has been harder, right? I have to go rebuild screens and components step by step. If you look at what we call model-driven apps today, the way that apps are declaratively built on the platform formerly known as XRM, it's very much the opposite, the inverse, right? It's I get rich UI and I can build sophisticated grids and forms over a robust data source, and they can do validation and defaulting and logic and whatnot. The trade-off is that customizing that UI, breaking my UI level contract is harder, and integrating with other data sources is harder. And so our roadmap is very much to bring those things together into one thing, right? And we're going to do that practically, right? We have a meaningful install base. In fact, MAU on each platform is about equal today, MAU, monthly active users. So we're not going to go dark and completely re-platform them overnight, but you'll see us taking steps like embed Canvas into model, use richer CDS concepts inside of Power Apps, the Canvas more natively, and then over time start to, those lines will blur basically. And we've got some materials that we can share maybe on a separate call more deeply about exactly what we think that sequence of events looks like over the next year or so. But it will be a progression, and you'll see us sort of double down there. We don't really intend to operate two low-code, high-productivity UI platforms in parallel with the same name on the top, right? That's an artifact of how we've brought some of these strengths into one place. But that's a thing we want to do, working out loud and making sure that we're progressively unlocking value for each community as we go, and not something where we sort of build our perfect encapsulation here in the dark and then release it in 2 years and hope for the best, right? So it's going to be a road, and we're going to be on it together, and we are on it together.
We'll be looking forward to having some conversations.
Ryan, what I heard is that we have our April meeting ready to go.
Peace. Hey, there you go.
All right.
Happy to share some of that content with this group.
Julie, I already linked in him so we can get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And happy to pull in a couple other folks from the Power Apps team. But I do want to double click on what Matt said. It's all Power Apps going forward, right? And it's not, Power Apps is not just the blank canvas rectangle PowerPoint like thing for low code. It is really how we think about app development broadly as a platform. And we really think about it holistically. Dynamics 365 applications for sales, service, and marketing are built on Power Apps today, are extended and customized using Power Apps, and that same capability is something that we can, build on independently of those CRM applications now as well. And it's just our job collectively to continue making that more compelling and more true as we go out there.
Now, I think, Ryan, you're going to get cornered by some MVPs in a few days. So.
Yes, and we're for those of you coming to the MVP Summit, we will share that roadmap very transparently, for sure.
Spectacular. So, Todd, I see you have a question. Can you come off mute and ask your question about dialogues?
Yes, I'm just kind of wondering what the future is for dialogues and the replacement or recommended replacement going forward. I see a lot of posts in the community of using kind of flow and kind of input parameters, and I think Nick had a post like using Canvas apps to do it. Is there a plan, I guess, later on in the platform to offer up a full replacement, or is it one of those choices will become the replacement?
So there's two answers to that. There's the short-term tactical answer and the long-term strategic answer. Okay, I will address the strategic, and then Ryan, who essentially I think would be on the front for anything else from a tactical point of view, can cover that. Strategically, the concept of dialogues is something that we do want to invest in the future and bring out from the point of view of a Q&A type system, i.e. here's a set of questions, there's a decision matrix, decision tree, and then make decisions to move on. Vis-a-vis the workflow guided, the task guide system that exists in USD, the guide system that you see in mixed reality, a couple of those other kind of decision tree based matrices where there is a human answering questions on the way, not a workflow making the decisions. So that's the strategic that is something we want to invest in. As far as the root technology that would be used, Flow will be a big part of that. How will it be surfaced UX-wise in the future? That's still being debated. What level of customization, crafting, and so on and so forth. But currently we have 3 in our infrastructure, in our product group, in the business applications group. We have 3 distinct versions. Actually, I think we have 4, come to think of it, because I think B Central has one too. So AX has got one, B Central's got one, Guides has got one, and USD's got one. And we want to bring that together. Okay, and then tactically, I'll toss it to Ryan.
Thanks. Look, I think tactically speaking, we want to enable a variety of tools for the right answer. Dialogues can mean a lot of different things, from very simple interactions to very complex multi-step interactions. I think on the level of complex multi-step interactions that require custom UI, that's exactly why we're bringing the platforms together, and today investing in embedded Canvas apps or Canvas components, as we're continually thinking about those embedded pieces as a powerful tool there. Obviously, things like BPF and the process-driven tools, can solve some version of those use cases. Embedded PCF controls can solve some versions of those more advanced use cases. I think the goal is to open up the toolkit. Just to be clear, though, we don't right now have a plan to go replace a standalone declarative dialogue designer that is independent of these other pieces. It's really about sort of consolidating onto some of the core patterns that are flexible and giving you the choice to go do what you need. Now, I think we need to gut check that and make sure that's holding up to reality in practice, right? And we need that feedback. But in general, I think what we're trying to do is reduce the number of patterns when practical and increase their utility, rather than necessarily having one-off patterns for every little UI interaction.
Does that give you what you were hoping for, Todd? So,
yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
Phil,
so,
I see you.
So summation there is, yes, we know we've created a hole. We've deprecated a feature without a pure equivalent. We're sorry. We are going to, we do have kind of a way to band-aid it going forward, but there is a larger strategic initiative to essentially bring these techs together. There are several you guys and several vendor solutions in the market that do it tremendously better than Dialogues did it, which actually is a lot of the influence there.
So, Omar, can you take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Hi, yes, thanks.
Perfect.
We noticed in one of the recent builds, when you select an entity in the solution window, a button called Solution Layers appears next to the Publish button. Currently, it throws an error actually when I click on it, but what is this button supposed to do exactly? Does it reveal the layers for the entity? What's happening, like the history of the entity layers, or what exactly?
Sorry, can you? Sorry, I just missed that first part of that question. Can you ask the first part again?
Yeah. So when you open a solution and choose, select an entity, there is a new button called Solution Layers next to the Publish button.
Okay, so you're in Canary now. So that's a new feature that's just working out. So we've added a few things recently, and we're adding some more stuff very shortly. So I'll just sort of give you a sort of preview as to what we've done and what we're just about to do. So we added solution history as a view shortly, like about a month and a half ago. So you can actually see the history of solution imports, as well as accessing the error message after the fact, which is important if you forgot to download the log or view the error message, or if some backend operation did that for you, or let's say you went to the admin center to install an application and you got the wonderful message that says install failed. So you can have access to that information as well as see what was going on in your system at that point in time. So that was solution history. Then just in these trains that are going out now, which is in Canary and now working their way out through our early release stations here, is what we're called solution layering. So solution layering is giving you now the ability to see on a component basis. So if you navigate into a component, you can see what layers of solutions have touched that component. Because a solution, so you can see which solution at the bottom of the stack, which one introduced it, any other solutions that are on top of it, or even the active layer. And that active solution really means your unmanaged layer. So basically any changes you do it on top. When you click in each of those layers, you can see all the properties as well as just the change properties. So you can get a better perspective as to specifically what that solution brought in or changed in that layer. The next feature, which is going to come out shortly after, like in a couple, say about another 4 to 6 weeks, follow shortly there, is a button for you to undo active customizations. So if you're in the solution layer UI and you have an active layer on top and you want to return to being managed, you can actually delete the active customization for that component. And this will allow you to go back to a fully managed state. And the reason these are really important is, first of all, they give you visibility as to why the things are the way they are. In addition to that, we've been fixing a lot of the layering bugs in the solution stack to be very consistent, where we only insert patches just above the base solution. We only we insert the new upgrade just above the base solution that it's replacing. And when we do an update, it stays in the same area. So basically, solutions stay where they are. And if you have active layers on top of that, it basically will hide any changes or improvements that you're making from the underlying publishers. So the remove active will now allow you to go back to the managed stack to start seeing those changes from those publishers.
Thank you so much.
All fitting together into sort of a theme to make it self-service for you. So first of all, you can see what's going on, and second of all, you can do something about it.
Shan, I got another stack question for you in regards to solutioning. So now that we're able to have flows and integrations in the solution stack, if a customer if we deploy a flow and then the customer wants to extend that flow like we would extend customizations, does that work the same way?
Well, it works the same way. I'm putting big air quotes that you can't see right now, because there's really two models within the solution system today. The first model is what you would know with form and sitemap, app modules, and ribbon is a merge behavior. And forms is like a three-legged merge. But bottom line is their merge behavior where you're only shipping a partial part of a component. Then we have all the other components, and they're a full replace model. So flows today is a full replace model. So it does work like what workflows would work like today. It has the same type of solution model. But you can't expect that you're going to be able to, with the current way we're bundling flows, and the same thing with legacy workflows, is if the managed solution underneath updates a flow, it's going to update the whole flow. So if you do want to have some segmentation as to what does what, you have to separate some different solutions so you can service different components via a different component on a different solution.
Yeah,
sorry.
That philosophy applies to, so let me take an aside here just for a minute and talk about really what the flow component type is, okay? And it's something new in our solution system. In the past, all the components that you're used to dealing with have actually been fully native and resident inside CDS and run by CDS's runtime, the XRM runtime. The flow component and the Canvas app components are actually what we're starting to call federated components. And you're going to see us do more of this over time, where they are not actually, while we manage and store them and interact with them through the CDS API from your point of view, they're actually configuring and running satellite services, other services within your subscription for your capability. That allows us to rapidly bring new capabilities without having to put all the chops in the core CDS infrastructure. It lets us farm those components out and scale them independently in a much more flexible fashion. And just as a general rule going forward, anything that kind of falls into that category is going to be a full replace behavior, i.e. there won't be a merge behavior. Now, based on customer feedback and the design of that particular component, we may change that on a component by component basis. But for the most part, we're trying to shy a bit away now from the merge type behaviors for these new components.
So I want to add some flavor to that. So from a specific component, yes, but as part of our solution model here, we do want to have merge-like behaviors in many different component types, like for instance on security roles and stuff like that. So right now the problem with security roles is that if you ever replace that layer, you basically are paving down and overwriting everything. And in reality, you really intended to have a sort of a merge-like behavior. So we are, even though that every single component would have a single field, a single entity, and that's how flow would be, we still want to get merge-like behavior. In addition, for ALM health, if we sort of think of as the unmanaged solution, the export, the what is in your source control system for the component, we really are, the goal we're trying to get to is that the only thing that's in your source control is what you've changed. And that sort of means that we have to come up with a, I'm going to call it a merge-like behavior because it's not the merge that we would know today, but it's a behavior that sort of emulates a merge and only exporting what's delta and only changing what's delta and having a partial merge type of a behavior in the solution system.
Yeah, you see this today a lot with entities if you look at the managed export of an entity using the segmentation system. Now, just before we continue on, Colin, I want to call out something that's important here. You're confusing merge, and this is probably the way I described it. When I was referring to merge, I'm talking about the three-legged merge behavior that we see with things like forms. So what's underneath of it, what's on top of it, put it together and create the composed image. In the scenario of layering still works even in a replace mechanic. The prior image is still there in the prior version or in the pure version, and an uninstall will expose it. Okay.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks.
So Ray, you want to ask your question? Can you come off of mute?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is great. Good to listen in. So the charting and dashboard functionality in CRMs, has been there for a long time. Doesn't seem to have received a lot of investment. I haven't used it a whole lot on projects because most of the time I can kind of get what we need just from views and advanced find and things like that. But my current project, they're wanting more, charts and visuals and things like that. And I've been using that. And it's pretty limited. It's not very rich. You can't configure your legends or you can't change the numbers to percentages or, arrange things. You can't go 3D without editing the XML and stuff. I'm just wondering, is there going to be some investment made there? I know we've heard a lot about, Power BI as the future of reporting and so on. The problem with that in my case, and I think many people, is that you have to pull the data out and now you've lost your CRM security boundaries, right? So if you've got a bunch of business units and stuff, you've now got to recreate somehow that security outside of CRM. So wondering, what is the future? Any plans there to continue to invest?
Yeah.
Question.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said that's a good question. Excellent question.
Yes. So look, I think we'll be totally transparent. This is Ryan on the Power Up side, that there are growing gaps here today between what the platform can do natively and what Power BI can do as a best-in-class, business intelligence tool. I think the rub for us in full transparency is we don't want to go rebuild another Power BI and maintain two of them in parallel, right? And I think in the spirit of kind of consolidating patterns and using the best tech where it applies, I think what we're working through right now is what is the best approach to take advantage of all the richness that Power BI offers and get around many of the gaps that it has today that you're pointing out. Certainly, moving beyond the security boundary is one of them. The other is just that I've got to embed today this whole Power BI runtime inside of a broader model-driven app or Dynamics app, and there's a lot of perf and just general capability things that come along with that, right? I want to select the bar on the chart and have the view filter That's hard to do today at scale with embedded Power BI in the way that it works right now. So we are having conversations with the Power BI team about how we close those gaps and how we use it more natively in the platform, and how we take advantage of all the great things they've done in a BI context and not rebuild them from scratch. In full transparency, we have not landed the precise month-by-month plan there, and it is still something we're working through. So in the next couple months, I would not expect radical innovation there in the fullness of time. TM, absolutely expect that we're going to bring those things together more closely.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So much, Ryan. So, Dave, I don't know, can you come off mute? I know you're also at the airport. I can ask your question. So Dave's question is, will Power BI assets join Flow and Canvas as fully deployable assets in the near future so you can package a complete Power Platform app?
So I'm gonna pay Ryan in the fullness of time. Yes, that is something that is actively being worked. There is a shorter term list of targets, but those assets are definitely on the list.
In the geological near future, yes.
So in the next ice age, or yeah, got it.
Yes.
So then the follow-up question is, when do we get the time machine?
You guys barking at that you need it that fast. So let's just kind of put it in perspective. There's a couple of things that have to come together to bring the various assets in. Okay. What we try very hard not to do is release something or add something to the solution system that effectively is broken. I.e., you try to do a deployment, but it'll import, but then you've got to do a bunch of legwork to get it to actually work. Okay, we're trying to avoid that. In order for us to get to that level, just take Power BI as a reference case. In order for us to get there with Power BI, we have to solve the aforementioned security issue. We have to solve the data touching issue as far as, can we make that a much more real-time data integration that isn't something that has to be crafted for a particular situation? Can those things be configured in real time, i.e. as part of the import behaviors? Can we extend the general security construct out, or do we treat it like we do with SSRS reporting, where it's all about the perspective of the user that's actually accessing it, i.e. inferring the credentials through, which is the way the connector system today works to a great degree. But if you share that report, that doesn't necessarily have that same behavior. Those problems, once they are solved, open the door for now packaging. Okay. We don't have all the answers to those questions yet. We don't have that working fully in a way that we're comfortable without it being, tailored to a particular environment. We don't really have a good way to migrate that between environments right now. It can be done. It can absolutely be done within the scope of an environment, but it requires a bunch of tuning. Once we've got that to that repeatable stage, then the packaging conversation starts up, and we figure out how to package them in. Okay, you'll see that with pretty much everybody in the business application space as far as things that appear on the Maker portal. Having it appear on the Maker portal is also another good indicator that it's on the short-term path to get integrated into the solution system. Okay.
Thank you, Matt. So, Phil, I believe you have two unanswered questions. One about offline capabilities and the other about the admin experience and when is that going to be under control. Which would you like to ask first?
Offline capabilities.
Okay, go ahead and present your question then for us.
Yeah, sure. So RESTGO has a custom interface you have to build, and it's got a different designer via Woodford. So you've got that interface, you've got the model-driven apps, and you've got Power Apps, Canvas apps. the offline capabilities between all of those are different. Resco seems to be the only larger scale one at the moment, but where's the future headed for offline capabilities, and is there a goal to reach feature parity maybe with Resco?
Yes. In a word, and I think the real goal is that the platform should be able to deliver apps as sophisticated or more sophisticated than what an ISV like Resco has been able to build today. That's not necessarily because we want to compete. It's great that people can also build low level on the platform, but it's just the expectation of apps in a modern era should quote unquote just work regardless of the strength of their internet connection is kind of core to fundamentals on lots of levels, right? And there's really two lenses we look at that through. You know, one of them is just raw performance for everybody having a great mobile experience. You know, as they move across varying levels of signal fidelity. The other is then really enabling truly offline scenarios where, you know, even in 2019 and 2020, there's still a meaningful amount of the world and factories and locations that just don't have an active internet connection, and we need to serve those for things like, you know, field service scenarios and inspection scenarios. Those have different but related sets of requirements with them. Supporting that elegantly at the platform level with broad extensibility is not simple and won't happen overnight. And I know, you know, historically we've had some steps forward and steps back there as a platform. But we are, right now, if you're not aware of or participating in the private preview that's about to become a public preview of an initial step to go ship mobile offline in the platform, happy to follow up offline about that. We will take some ship steps here in the April release cycle around that, and they won't be the last ones. And I think you'll see us increase the capabilities there over time. Is it canvas versus model? I think to that previous question, you know, really we're on a journey to unify those platforms. I would think of it as when I'm working with data over CDS, I will have an increasingly strong and by default offline experience on mobile. You know, that's an expectation of something you'll see us invest in over the next year and beyond as we add capabilities there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, you want to ask your next question, Phil?
Yeah, sure. At the moment, web.powerapps.com, admin.powerapps.com, admin.powerplatform.microsoft.com, they're all a bit disjointed and contain different bits of the platform.
Yes.
And I was wondering, when are we likely to see the sort of classic solution designer disappear, or is that a very long-term goal at the moment?
It's not a deeply long-term goal. It's not a fullness of time thing. I think it's a more near-term thing. Right now, we've been operating them independently as we build up the core capabilities of the powerapps.com experience to be at sort of at least near functional parity with what's in the legacy Solution Explorer. What you'll see from us over the course of the summer and into the fall this year is first just explicitly linking from the legacy Solution Explorer to the new modern experience and encouraging more people to use it. And you know, what we want to do is be running more water through the pipes and getting more feedback about that experience. Mm-hmm. And then we will flip over the inverse to make it the default click from a Dynamics instance to go to the modern powerapps.com experience, with then the escape hatch to go back to the classic Solution Explorer if you need it. But we want to do that practically, and we want to do it where we have confidence that the experience is not only better, both from a perf and productivity perspective, but also has, you know, enough of the capabilities that you can reasonably complete work in it end to end. And you know, that's not a binary, we're going to ship that in 1 week. That's a, you know, over time we're watching closely and taking feedback closely as we evolve that experience. But that is something that certainly by the end of this calendar year, our aspiration is to have the majority of the customization traffic on the modern experiences and not the legacy experiences. and we'll work there over time. Now, there's a separate question in what you asked, which is related, but is sort of actually we've got several different pieces of even quote unquote modern experiences, right? We've got web.powerapps.com. There's the admin experiences. There is consolidation happening there too, and we are investing in sort of reusable UI constructs, a sort of shell, if you will, that bring those patterns together more cohesively, so you see less of the seams between these different experiences for administration or browsing all my apps or editing a particular item. And you'll see things actually from a URL perspective start to consolidate on make.powerapps.com, which is also even a more evolved infrastructure under the hood. The UX isn't going to change, but it's faster and more scalable and more supportable from our perspective, and it's allowing us to kind of take the 5 generations of legacy UI we have back to the classic form designers and the classic view designers, and more efficiently bring them forward into the modern era without having each one of those be a net new software project from scratch. In fact, the new form and view designers that are in preview right now are already using this latest modern infra, and we're just migrating a lot of things to it. So you'll see both consolidation of the modern experiences over the course of the next year, and seeing those more prominently in the mainline workflow as we build empirical confidence that they're better than their predecessors, and we don't want to assume that just because they look nicer that they're better. We actually want to do that based on performance data, stability data, and raw feedback from people who are making about their productivity. So that feedback is super valuable. Please keep it coming for those who have already been giving it.
Thank you very much. That's great answer. I really do enjoy the new interfaces there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. I think we are out of questions. So I
believe there's an unanswered question from David about when will the Time Machine be released. Technically, it has already been released in its time frame. We just haven't experienced it yet.
Oh, fair. Very good point. Thank you, Ryan. So with that, thanks for everyone for today's meeting. Thank you for the last 10 years, and we'll just keep moving forward. And Ryan, we'll have you back hopefully in April. Watch for an email from me to get that on the schedule.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Right.
Thanks, guys. That was great.
Yeah.
Thanks for being part of this amazing community.
Congrats, everybody.
Thanks, Julie.
Cheers.